Hello there, my name's Jeremy Hill. I'm convener of the Membership Services Committee, and it's my pleasure to present to you here an edited version of the webinar that we ran just recently to launch Book 54 and the recording that goes with it from Neil Galloway and his band, an excerpt from which you've just heard. This session introduces the book, talks a little bit about how it came together, how the dances were chosen, and most importantly, introduces you to some of the dances and some of the devisers and dancers who were involved in putting the book together. We'll also hear a little bit from Luke Brady, the music director on the musical side, and other members of the Membership Services Committee. Finally, there's an opportunity to buy the book and CD. You'll hear some information about that and how it's being distributed around the world as we speak. There won't be an opportunity here to ask questions or for discussion, but I'd be delighted to hear from anybody if you have any comments or questions at the end of the session. You can contact me at msc@rscds.org. So without any further ado, I'll take you into the main session, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much.
Many of you will have been involved in some way in the preparation of Book 53, where there was a significant exercise around the world with over 200 dances being submitted and trials by branches and groups. And it was felt that Book 53 obviously contained a good number, but there were still some good dances that didn't make it into Book 53 for one reason or another. And so we wanted to make sure to give them some, as it were, airtime. And we chose another 12 dances from that whole exercise based on the feedback that was received. And we wanted to, at the same time, recognize, obviously, the 100 years, centenaries that were starting up with Glasgow and Edinburgh, and 4 other branches that were founded 100 years ago this year. So Aberdeen, Dundee, Perth, and what is now West Renfrewshire. And so the book contains 18 dances in total. It's got 12, therefore, from the exercise, and 6, one representing each of the branches. And so I'm going to just present these dances in batches. So here's the first batch, as it were, the 6 dances from the Centenary branches, as I'm referring to them at this stage. And you can see some of these may be familiar to you. They've come from actually a range of previous publications, or indeed in some cases not previously published. And we're very pleased to include them in the book. And what we've done is to take the, as it were, the instructions and the materials, and we've brought them into sort of RSCDS standard format, and they've obviously also included in the recording, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And as part of what we did this year, as we did with Book 53, we asked each of the branches who had submitted or been involved in the dances to present a video, so that dancers can access the, as it were, the raw material, and see what these are going to look like. And the first of these actually is slightly unusual. So we've got Peter Knapman on the call. Peter, one of my predecessors in this chair, as it were, and membership services, but also the deviser of 100 Years Since, which is a Glasgow book, dance, and was published in their centenary book. And interestingly, that book is sold out, so you can't actually buy that book any longer, at least in physical format. We asked Glasgow to send us a video, and indeed they have sent us a video, although some of you might recognize it if you've kept a careful eye on what Glasgow itself has published. However, what you're going to see next is a video from the Glasgow branch with music by Neil Galloway and a sight of 100 Years Since. I'm going to pick up with Peter, if I may, and ask you to talk a little bit about the genesis of the dance and perhaps the musical angle as well.
Thanks, Jeremy. Whoops, a lot of pinging going on there. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I think so.
Good. 100 years. How do you celebrate 100 years of dancing? And I thought of two things. One, the formation. So I looked at I knew what it was. The first formation in book one, dance one, and the last formation in book 52, in the last dance in book 52. Luckily, that was a circle, so that made life easy. So we've got a petronella at the beginning and a circle at the end. And so that's how the formations came about. But I also wanted a tune that was preferably traditional, preferably one that people didn't know, and referenced 100, centenary, or whatever. And I did a wee quick search on Charles Gore's website and other places, and found 100 Years Since, which is a tune I'd never heard before. But I found out it was written by James Porteous, who I heard of but hadn't got his books. And the book, actually, the version I found was in the Sky collection. And unfortunately, the tune was in E flat, which is a struggle for me to play, and not a very comfortable tune for many people who play country dance music. So I transcribed it first into F and then into G, and decided that it sounded best in G. So I submitted it in the key of G major, and it's a nice wee tune. It's an unusual tune, and James Porter is an unusual person. He was primarily taught by Nathaniel Gow, the son of Neil, and he came from Dumfriesshire, and he published two collections of music. Both collections have exactly the same tunes in them, and many of the tunes in the second edition have completely different names. And we have no idea why, whether he fell out with his patron or what, but suddenly all the names of many of the people for whom the tunes are named after in the first book, so which 100 Years Since is Miss Jardin's reel in his first edition, and then it became 100 Years Since in 1821, I think it was. 1820 was the first edition, 1821 was the second, with completely different names, and there's no record as to why. That was my thinking. The only other thing I wanted to do was try and reconnect, not just with 100 years of the society, but 100 years before that, with dancing in Scotland. And if you look back at the 1820s, the first instructions for Petronella clearly have the movement to begin the formation as a travelling step. They use the word chassis step in Joseph Lowe's books and many other books in the 19th century. But by the time you get to the beginning of the 20th century, that travelling step has become a pas de basque as we now do it. But I thought, right, we'll go back. And that's how the dance came into being. And it was
Peter, thank you very
unfortunately,
much. It's great to connect. I think to I mean the name and the dance, therefore connecting really nicely to the history of the society and beyond, of course.
yeah.
No, it's great, and was part of our aim with the book actually to pick up some of these historic links. Some of the dances include some very traditional figures, but naturally there are some, you might say, variations, as you'll see when you get to see the book. But Peter, thanks very much indeed. That's really interesting. So we had six dances from the respective centenary branches. One of them I wanted to highlight. We've not got anybody on, as it were, locally to talk about this, but I did want to make a reference to this dance, Kinclaven Bridge. It's a dance by Douglas Henderson. Some of you will know his dances, Baldovan Reel, Glens of Angus. It has some similarities with Glens of Angus, actually. But the tune that was chosen for this is, I think, of particular interest. Miss Dow's Fancy, and this is a version here that Luke's arranged for us for the book. And this is a figure who has not, some would certainly say, not received as much attention in the history of the society as she might warrant. She was based in Dundee and was a physical education teacher there. But she was really instrumental in starting up the branches, the activities of the society, I suppose the SCDS, as it would have been in those days. And this tune was written for her by John Reed, or Dancy Reed as he was known, and they were both early proponents, early members of the staff at summer school. The tune was written, I haven't got the date actually in front of me, in the early 30s. And John Reed's band used to be the band of the summer school, playing, the equivalent of, some of you might know the Olympians. That's the one I remember first hearing in the summer at the Younger Hall. John Reed's was the band of the day in the 1930s. And it seemed very appropriate, therefore, to recognise Meta Dow, as she was known, nothing to do with Facebook, but an early Miss Dow was one of the key players, but not a name, I suspect, that many people would otherwise recognise. As I say, Douglas Henderson's book, including this dance, Kinclaven Bridge, it's an interesting dance. You can see with the original script here. We'll talk a little bit later about how the activity that we've gone through in order to, you might say, regularize some of the wording. But before we do that, I'm going to turn to Luke to talk a little bit. Actually, Luke, I suppose you are the Dundee representative in this context, perhaps. But maybe you can talk a little bit about the music and the recording in particular.
The 1930s does go a little bit before my time, Jeremy. Not much, but a little bit before my time. But no, I think when you hear the tune, Miss Dow's Fancy, I think all of you worldwide may recognise it. It is a very well-known tune. It's probably definitely John Reed's most famous tune that he wrote. First of all, I apologise. My voice is almost completely gone. I'm choked with the cold. Yes, so the music for Book 54, as Jeremy alluded to at the start, the bulk of the dances from this book were the ones that were submitted for Book 53. And as such, a lot of the dances came with tunes that were already published and already established with those dances. And some of you will remember that Book 53 was also the first time we actually sent you recordings of every original tune and asked you to test the dances through with those tunes. And we actually got feedback on the music itself. So we started Book 54 very far ahead because we already had comments on the suitability of the music and comments on it. I would say about 2/3 of the book already had original tunes submitted. And just by luck, I would say it's actually a very diverse book. It's actually quite, musically speaking, it's a very, very diverse book. We have pianists, we have fiddle players, we have accordionists, all represented. As Peter has suggested, the tradition and the kind of classics are also in there as well. We have James Porteous, we have Macintosh tunes for various parts of the dances. You'll also be very delighted to hear the musicians that are on the call that I have kept Peter's key of G major rather than putting that 100 Years Since, which is a very tricky tune, back into E flat. But I was very happy with the collection of music that came together. We filled in gaps where we thought there were perhaps stylistic gaps. So I went to some very well-known and adaptable musicians to provide some music that would fit in with perhaps styles of tunes that fit the dances that we didn't already have. So perhaps create a Strasby that wasn't a Strasbourg air, but wasn't hugely strong, something a bit more lyrical, a jig that was a bit bouncier rather than a runny style of jig, to fill in different gaps. Then with help of membership services, we engaged the brilliant Neil Galloway's Scottish Dance Band to record the music. So the recording process is, as you would imagine, we send Neil out the original tunes and all of the parameters, all of the lengths that he needs to record. And we also give the band an opportunity to record some additional music for themselves. This CD, a double CD, is 23 tracks in length. To the best of my knowledge, that is the most any band for the RSCDS has been able to record in one single recording session. We've done big books before, but we've done it over multiple sessions. I really can't express how impressed I was with Neil and his band that day in Castle Sound Studios. He played absolutely magnificently, and he got so much material in the can to record. It's just absolutely fabulous stuff. So his band, as you can see from the screen that Jeremy has shared, it really is kind of an all-star affair. Going from left to right, you've got Gary Sutherland on second accordion, an amazing musician and band leader in his own right. Graham Berry and Ian Adamson on piano and drums, I'm sure need very little introduction to the vast majority of you. But for those that don't know, you've probably danced to them more than anybody else, because they are powerhouses on the Scottish dance band scene, playing in multiple different Scottish dance bands. So your recordings will almost all be guaranteed to have someone from this group. Neil, of course, himself in the middle, and the wonderful Susan Gordon on fiddle and Brian Cruikshanks on bass. Just an absolute titanic group of musicians there. It was wonderful. Wonderful to be there to listen to. In terms of preparing the music themselves, some of the music that's printed in the book comes in various different forms, sometimes handwritten, sometimes just a note of what the tune is. So a little work needs to be done to find versions, and of course in some instances there's different versions of tunes. For example, a good example is the one Jeremy was talking about, Miss Dow's Fancy. There are several different versions of Miss Dow's Fancy that are published. For the purpose of the book, I picked the simplest and most straightforward one that would probably sit best with the most instruments. Neil's version on the CD is a little bit more virtuoso, which is lovely to listen to and to dance to. But the music was typeset up and a piano arrangement made so that it could be used for all our different instrument variations. Some people felt that Book 53's arrangements were a little bit complicated, so I tried to make Book 54's a little bit more simple and a little bit straightforward to play in the heat of battle, so to speak. And then it went out to a series of proofreaders who, as always, I'm sure Jeremy would agree with the book, the moment you send your work out to the proofreaders, it changes dramatically, because everything you think was fine suddenly doesn't come across quite as fine as it was before. But I can't thank the people that proofread the material enough. They all provide different skills. Angela Young has a very good pictorial brain. She's able to tell me that things don't look quite right in the position they're in. And Graham Berry's harmonics are amazing. And I would give one shout out. I suspect he's not on the call, but Andrew Nolan is a fabulous proofreader for me, because he can come back to me and say, this isn't wrong, but I don't think it's how you want it to sound. And he tells me what I wanted it to be and not what I put down on the paper, which is incredibly valuable. But it's a brilliant book. It's nice to play through, actually. If you're a musician and you're not just playing for dances, just play through the tunes in the book. You'll get a lovely different style, historically speaking, stylistically speaking, and they all give their dances a bit of a unique flavour. So I think that kind of covers it. Have I missed anything, Jeremy, or is that?
No, that's wonderful, Luke. I'll just take a pause here and see whether I don't know whether anybody has any particular questions for Luke about the music. Some of you might have seen Neil on the Blether with William and Gary recently. It's a great insight. I love the way that they were very careful not to expose any of the information about book 54 in advance, leaving the field open for us here. But anybody want to put their hand up if you've got any questions for Luke? Then I think that proves you covered it beautifully, Luke. Thanks very much. And it is, I mean, as Luke referred to, this is an amazing team effort. I mean, I was partially involved in book 53, but obviously it's a different kettle of fish. You might say taking the lead, although for me it was very much a team effort from the Membership Services Committee and many people beyond, and we'll talk a little bit more about that process in a moment. So I wanted to introduce some more dances to you, and I may give you brief snippets of the videos rather than imposing lots of laggy material on you. As it happens, and I really only noticed this when I was preparing for this call, of the 18 dances, we had 6 from the Centenary, the Centenary branches, as I've referred to them, and then 6 others from Scotland and England, and then, as you'll guess, there were 6 actually from outside the UK. So these are 6 dances that we picked up, through the process. They were submitted by a whole range of branches, as you can see, across the UK, and a nice range of, you might say, well-known devisers, and perhaps some new devisers to the RSCDS material, and likewise on the music side, and also a range of lengths and so on, which is all part of creating the variety in the book. So I'm going to give you, I'll give you a burst, but a little more than that, of one more of the videos. We're going to go to Mark and Susie's Jig. I'd like to introduce, I think we have George on the line somewhere. George, can I, do you want to unmute yourself and say hello?
Hello, I hope you can hear me.
Oh, yes, perfect. I can't see you at the moment. I don't know whether you've got a video you can put on, but no matter if not.
For some reason, my video is not coming up. Well, it's coming up, but it won't switch on. I don't know why.
Oh, don't worry. Well, we've got your picture on screen, so those of you who know you will recognise you, and perhaps introduce yourself to a few others. But maybe you can talk a little bit about how the dance came together, and indeed who are Mark and Susie for that matter.
Yeah, well, as you can see the picture there, Mark and Susie sang 3rd and 4th from the left. First 2 are Claire and Stan. Stan did the recording, then we have Mark and Susie, then we have Lorna Valentine and myself, and then we have Lorna Valentine's 2 granddaughters, Olivia, well, Zeta first, and then Olivia, who are both very keen young dancers. So that's the video, and put together, as I say, Stan did the recording. The dance itself came about because during lockdown, we weren't sure how to keep everybody together, so we took a leaf out of the RSCDS book and started a Zoom session, one for Lorna's class on a Tuesday and one for my class here in Arbroath on a Friday. But it turned out that everybody on Tuesday also came on Friday, and everybody on Friday also came on Tuesday, and several from roundabout, including Stan and Claire and from Aberdeen, and Mark, who was up with Bankery. So that's how the whole thing came together. Then, just to sort of add a bit more interest to the occasion, I started making up wee dances for some of the people that were there, and that included Mark and Susie, who are Susie's a big important element in the Forfar branch, and Mark's a partner. So we put together this wee dance just for fun, and also as we were dancing up and down the hall, Lorna and I, we had to have something that sort of fitted up and down the hall. So that's why there's reels on the side, down the middle and back, and a wee poussette, because that's my favourite formation of poussette. Being of a certain generation, that the poussette was in just about every dance. So that's how that bit came around. RSCDS Forfar branch very kindly asked me to provide 3 dances to put forward for book 53. It was very kind of them, because my home branch is actually the Dundee branch. I'm an associate member of Forfar, and they put 3 in, and very kind or very happily, Mark and Susie's jig was chosen. I should say a wee bit about the music, because it says there, Mark, it's up now, George Watts' jig by Ron Kerr. Pardon me. Ron Kerr, of course, is fairly local. He's Montefieth. He's a superb musician, fiddler, and writes some great tunes, and was in many, many bands or many, many recordings with bands throughout the 60s. Just about every big band he was part of. And he was supposed to be playing for our first football in Dundee, but unfortunately, just before that, that's when Ron took ill and had to retire. So no problem, we got Jim Lindsay to do the gig. But about the February following that, this rather spurious looking envelope arrived through the post. And when I opened it up, here was the tune George Watts' Jig that Ron Kerr had composed, and along with a nice letter apologising for not being able to play for us, and thanking me for the support I'd given the band over several years when I was chairman of the Dundee branch. So that's a picture of the music there. Great tune. I can't say I play it very well on my fiddle, but I do play it on the fiddle. And so that's the basis of the whole thing. And
That's wonderful.
Yeah, very, very pleased to see it come up.
Well, George, it's great to have it, and as you say, nice to have the link to the traditional figures like the poussette, and it looks like a really fun dance, actually, something for everybody. It looks quite active, maybe not one to have at the beginning of the program, but no, that's great. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for joining us. And I've got I'm going to move down south now to local to me. And one of the other dances from an English perspective, it's Miss Lucy Clark. So we'll see a little bit of this, and you might recognise some involvement in this. I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Mitchell from the Lucy Clark Scottish Country Dance Club. Liz, are you able to unmute yourself and say a little bit about this?
Yes, Jeremy, it's lovely to have the chance to talk about Lucy and the club, because not a lot is known about Lucy. So we're very grateful for being able to submit the dance through Hearts and Borders branch. So this is a nice occasion for me. Lucy, well, she was a musician and a teacher of imperial dance and Scottish country dancing. Her exam for the RSCDS Teacher's Certificate was conducted by Miss Jean Milligan, and at the time she praised the high standard of the candidates at that time. Lucy lived in Buckinghamshire and taught at local schools. She was pretty well a professional dance teacher in the 50s, which was quite unusual. And she danced and she set up classes in village halls and started her first group in Amersham in Buckinghamshire in 1954, a long time ago. Apparently, she demonstrated the steps and formations while she played the accordion, so that must have been quite a sight. She set very high standards and trained about 200 pupils for medal exams. And teams that she entered in the competitions in the London and home counties won several cups. Over about 13 years, she organised 160 monthly dances featuring a popular seven-piece band, McBain's, and the dances were always sold out well ahead. It's said that she vetted dancers' ability before she issued tickets to them, so she was quite a formidable lady. Sadly, all that came to an end when Lucy died very suddenly. She was only aged 54, and she died in 1966. After that, her dance group renamed the group. They named the club in her honour. And as our name has no geographical link to it, this gives us freedom to move locations, which has happened twice in the past. Today we meet in the centre of a small town, very strong community, and it's got excellent facilities in this hall, which allow us to run 2 classes simultaneously every week before our social dancing. We're now affiliated to the RSCDS and have 3 qualified RSCDS teachers. Our large events are sold out well ahead of the date, which is perhaps a nod to Lucy's endeavours all those years ago. And our 3 informal dances every year for less experienced dancers are very well attended. To commemorate our 70th anniversary last year, we set up a Lucy Fund with the aim of increasing the amount of live music at the club by having musicians in classes. And the fund is also to support the continuing professional development of teachers and MCs, funding their membership and workshop fees for the Regional Training Association. We're a thriving club with a reputation for being welcoming and friendly, and it's a wonderful bonus that the club dance has been able to be submitted through the Hearts and Borders branch and included in this latest book. Both these are worthy memorials to Lucy and perpetuate her memory. As far as the deviser goes, just a few words about Valerie Farr. She danced at the RSCDS London branch and was in the demonstration team for many years. And she also taught at the Lucy Clark Club. She married Bill Farr, and he was the leader of McBain's band, who was a 7-piece band that played for Lucy's dances. So all these connections seem to have come together and fit very well. So that's the story of Lucy and how things have moved on to the present day.
Liz, that's wonderful. Thank you. And it's a great as a tribute to her, I suppose, that it's still a thriving club. Always good fun. And in fact, you and I had the pleasure of dancing this dance last night at the Hearts and Borders dance, which was great fun. I'm sure others will like to give it a go. And in fact, Ian Robertson, who wrote the tune, was playing for us with Sandy Nixon last night. So it was a great combination.
Another connection as well,
another
that
local
was really
connection,
special.
indeed.
A local musician, wonderful chap, and it's all come together really well. So great.
Great, Liz. Thanks very much, Lee. Thanks for coming on. So I'm going to turn to, I guess, some of the practicality of the book for a moment. And I think Catherine Hoskin is on the line from New Zealand. We have a nice, widely spread membership services committee. Auckland, and Bexy Vepner is also on. She's in Vienna, who I must commend for an amazing job actually in doing the pulling together piece. But Catherine, if you're there, perhaps you can talk a little bit about some of the steps, particularly the one in the middle there, which has kept us busy for quite a few months.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. That is a traditional way of saying hello in New Zealand. And tēnā koutou is said 3 times to acknowledge the past, celebrate the present, and think of the future. And for this book, that is so appropriate. So the previous Membership Services Committee had chosen the dancers, and they had quite a long process to go through for that. And in November, the management board gave final sign-off to some of the crossing the T's and dotting the I's that had previously given sign-off to the book in concept form. And then began the work of taking all these instructions that came from a range of places and a range of different era into standard terminology. And you can see there's a picture of a book there. The RSCDS has a book of standard terminology, and that is the terminology that is meant to be used today. So we had 6 members of the committee, as Jeremy mentioned, from Scotland, England, Austria and New Zealand, music directors, and then Jeremy convening. And the dancers were all split up. We all had a few dancers to look after and a few dancers to be second eyes on. And you might think that when you've got a book of standard terminology and you've got a dance instruction, that it's a very easy process to get one into the other. You would be amazed at the number of discussions that we had about how did we manage and how did we work, because dancers now are quite many and varied. So there was quite a bit of backwards and forwards going on. At the same time, we were in communication with all of the devisers to see if we could find the story, because it's not just the dance that's important, it's why it was written and all of the stories. And the stories are in the book at the bottom of the page, along with the dance. There was an enormous amount of proofreading, and more checking. And then we needed to overview to make sure that all 18 dancers showed some consistency. And as Jeremy has already mentioned, Bexy did an amazing job of actually pulling all of the work from 6 different people and the musicians into one book. Luke has already mentioned the music. We were having discussions about the music as we went along. In April, there was a little bit more technical stuff in terms of talking with the publishers. Jeremy mostly did this, but we were all kept informed of what was going on at this stage of when we're liaising with the printers and the publishers about how to actually get this one document out to many people. And then there's the marketing material. And nowadays we need to think of marketing material for so many different ways. It's not just having posters and flyers and book covers, but there's also social media and videos and all sorts of other things like that. It's been a very enjoyable process, but quite a busy and active one. And my email's been pretty busy. I can't imagine what Jeremy's was like as the coordinator of this massive orchestra. And it was like an orchestra. How many people have been involved? Well, we're trying to count up how many people have been involved. We're losing count. We're well into the hundreds. So it's been quite a thorough process, and we've been very, very pleased that the devisers have been communicating with us all the way through.
Catherine, thanks very much. As you say, an orchestra, well, I'm a musician in other forms, as it were, and that's definitely an analogy I can relate to. One of the things I actually put on this slide, May, June, development of marketing material. And obviously, we're here today, and we're launching. And one of the things I should have mentioned, or is appropriate to mention at this point, these videos that are rather irritating in this format. We're actually going to be publishing them over the next couple of weeks. So Watch out for social media. Catherine actually is leading the charge on this. We've set things up so that we should be able to launch a video a day. So you'll have your daily dose, as it were. You'll be able to see the dances, and you'll be able to see the videos without the lag that occurs in this format. So hope you'll look forward to watching those. And it's also worth saying that as far as our thinking is concerned, is not the end of the story. We absolutely want to make sure that we make the most of this, what we think is an excellent book. And that's, I might say not just for commercial reasons, but for practical reasons. We think there are lots of good dancers here. We want people to be dancing. And one of the things that we want to capture, and this is a request actually to everybody on the call, we'd love to hear from you if you're planning to run any events related to Book 54. Our thinking is that we'd like to post up on the Society website any workshops that people are running, any opportunities they'll have to do some of these dances. I suppose if you're doing one of them, that's also interesting. But we'd like to hear about events that you're organising that people might come to get to know the dances. And we also want to get some pictures. Let's see people doing these dances. Can we publicise some of that, pictures, videos, so that the story will continue into the autumn, into the fall, or whatever time of year it is in your part of the world, and so people can really get to know these dances. So I've been saving up the last 6 dances for you, and here they are on the screen. So 6 dances from around the world. In practice, it's Australia and North America, US and Canada. So really interesting selection of dances here. One thing you might notice is in terms of the music for the dances that came to us from slightly further afield. So a couple of these did have tunes. So Kathy's Fascinator, for example, you can see a connection there. Muriel Johnston had, I think Muriel might be on the line somewhere, but had provided a couple of tunes for that dance, which is really exciting. And the dance from St. Catherine's, Mary Mayhem, we don't have anybody on the line in the middle of the night from there, but Kim Horn, who wrote the dance, Charles Cousins is her son-in-law, and he provided the tune, which was great. But the other 4 dances on this list didn't come to us with music, and one of Luke's enjoyable tasks was to find some composers or choose some music to go with them. And you'll see that actually the top 3, Neil himself wrote one of the tunes, and we asked Ian Muir, former music director, to supply another, and Luke provided the tune for A Driving Reel. I'm going to save a story to do with that one and the tune. I'll let you read the book when it comes out. But what I am going to share with you, we've got on the line John Brenchley, so we're going to see a little bit of the Darlington Dancer. So I think we have John on the line. You'll have noticed possibly a couple of interesting features about that dance. But John, if you're there, perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about who is the Darlington Dancer and how this came together.
Yeah, thanks. Hello, everybody, and well, good morning to you from Western Australia. Although for those of us in the Southern Hemisphere, it's good afternoon to you and good evening to Catherine. The dance is for a lady called Pat Stevenson, and Pat's been dancing in Western Australia in Perth here for many years. And she dances at a local club in the southern suburb of Rockingham. And she also comes to our branch's weekly Tuesday evening class. I wrote the Darlington Dancer to celebrate a significant birthday of Pat's. I'm not going to say which one, but the title refers to the town where she was born. And before emigrating to Western Australia, Pat came from the market town of Darlington, which is in the northeast of England. And for those of you who don't know that area, one of its main claims to fame is that it was one end of the first ever passenger railway, this famous Stockton to Darlington Railway. Maybe it'll have another claim to fame later on if this dance catches on. Pat was born in Darlington, and she tells me that her local church is just minutes from where they lived, and she was christened there. She married Alan there, and subsequently her 3 boys were all christened there. So she has very fond memories of Darlington as a location. She and her husband moved to Western Australia for a couple of reasons, she tells me. One was that her husband, who worked as a draftsman in the mining industry then in Sunderland, saw an advertisement for workers to come to Australia. But also at that time, they felt as a family that their teenage sons would have a better opportunity in Australia, as at the time in the Northeast, the job market was really quite depressed. So that was a twofold reason for coming to Australia. Pat didn't start her dancing actually in Scottish dancing until she moved to Australia, though she had done English country dancing at school. She doesn't recall there being any dancing of Scottish nature in Darlington at the time she was there, but perhaps there is now, I don't know. She's a really enthusiastic participant of dancing in Western Australia, and as well as coming to regular classes, she's attended the Australian winter schools whenever it's Perth's turn to host them. So I'm really pleased that her dance has been selected, because there's really no better deserving dancer to have a dance published for her. And I'll just finish by thanking Luke for finding the first tune, because here in Australia, we very rarely have the opportunity to dance to live music. So whenever I make up a dance, I'm ending up using recordings. And although I had a lovely tune on CD that I used for this dance, it was too well known really for the society to publish it. And Luke found this excellent tune by Robert McIntosh, Miss Oliphant's Strathspey, and it's in a traditional style, which is really what I wanted for the dance. So thanks very much, Luke, for finding that tune.
John, that's great. I think one thing that I touched on is quite an interesting construction of this dance, where you'll see that it's a sort of twice 40 bar Strathspey followed by twice 40 bar reel, and there's actually a sort of flipping of the sides that comes. I don't know if there's any particular reason, or was that just something you wanted to do that was just a little bit different, or was there any particular reason for that?
Well, yes, it started off with the common style of having 3s and 4s starting on the opposite side. But at the end of my 40 bars, when I'd made up all the formations I wanted, I found that instead of having 2 men in 3rd and 4th positions after the end of 40 bars, they'd ended up being in 1st and 2nd places on the wrong side. And as much as I played around with the formations, I wasn't happy with trying to force each repeat to end up with the 3rd and 4th couples on the opposite side. So I just said, okay, after 1 repeat, the 1s and 2 positions are on the opposite side. By the time you do 4 repeats, you end up all back where you started. So I just left it like that. But anybody teaching it will have to note that you can't expect the finishing positions at every repeat to be quite where you think they should be. But hopefully that's clear in the instructions.
And I hope so as well. A little bit of a sort of brain twister, as it were, for those who like that sort of thing. And I think
it was just that I couldn't get it to work any other way, so I just left it.
John, you burst the bubble here. I was thinking this was a very deliberately planned,
Sorry.
little bit of point of difference. But I hope people will enjoy that, and to some extent representative of the fact that we've got a whole range of dances. With some of them, I hope suitable for less experienced dancers, I think, and then one or two. There's a 96 bar jig, which I think people will like, a sort of set dance in that sense, in a square set, the tea pottery, a little bit of something for everybody. So just in the last few minutes, I just wanted you to be aware of as it were, the practicalities. One thing that we've done differently this year, and very deliberately, is to involve the schools and shops that take place, the schools that take place over the next month or so around the world. We just about, I'm going to say, managed to move the timetable forward enough so that we could actually get the materials out to shops and to schools, so that actually those of you attending the winter school in Australia, or the TAC workshop, or Blue Ridge and Pinewoods should be able to, well, first of all, I suppose, spoiler, but the teachers have been given the books, and so we're hoping that they will be able to use some of the material in the classes. And as you'll see, these shops around the world, the books and CDs are on the way to them, and they should be able to access those, and you should be able to buy them as well as at summer school. I mean, there's no reason why we need to have some sort of special, as it were, secrecy around St Andrew's summer school. All of the schools should be able to access the material, and all of you around the world. And we're also releasing the albums, the music, on iTunes and Amazon for download from the, I think, I don't have an exact date, but it's intended to be simultaneous. So roughly speaking, in the next couple of weeks, we'll make sure that people are made aware of that. I know that's something of interest to lots of people. Probably a question that other people might ask is about ebooks. When we don't have an ebook version available at the moment of the book, we've had some debate about this, and indeed sought the opinion of people in different parts of the world. I think for most people, the hard copy book as a teacher is still the primary source. Some people like to have an ebook as well, and I'll be honest and say we haven't found a good and efficient way of doing that without it just being, as it were, let loose as a PDF that everybody can share. So it's slightly a practical thing. I'd love to hear from anybody who's got smart ideas as to how we can solve that one. But at the moment, so there's a hard copy of the book, and the music will be available to download at a cost. So we're not releasing on Spotify because we get no money from them, basically. That's the reality. So at least for the first year, it'll be available to download. I very much look forward to hopefully seeing some of you on the dance floor at some point and getting to try some of these dances out. I think there's a great range. But otherwise, have a great rest of the evening or a great day ahead. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.